If you ache for truth, goodness, and beauty, if you're hungry for a Christianity with substance and strength, if you long for a faith that's big and bold and biblical and all about Jesus Christ, if you're inspired by the idea of one church that has spanned 20 centuries, 24 time zones, and 2 hemispheres, enfolding every race, nation, and language, then you're considering Catholicism. The moment that you tie human worth to economic output or market utility, you've already surrendered the field to the machines. And you've made a category error in reducing people to their utility in the marketplace, their economic output. If a person's value is measured by how efficiently that they produce, how many metrics they hit, how well they compete with the machines, then the day a machine can do it faster, cheaper, and without complaining is the day that that person becomes worthless. And that's exactly the lie that is swirling around us in 2026. Measuring people by their worth in the marketplace, by seeing people as means of production. Today, of course, the news is screaming about the coming job displacement from artificial intelligence, about how we're going to have to be sustained by universal basic income, about a future where most humans are simply unnecessary. But the Catholic vision of the human person says something radically different. It says that our dignity isn't something that we earn by performing. Our dignity is something that we receive because of who we are and whose image we've been made in. Let's just be honest. Artificial intelligence and robots can and will do many tasks better than us. Just as trucks and automobiles and diesel earth movers replaced horses and oxen. But our value was never, is never grounded in our ability to do those tasks. It's in who we are. As I said in the last episode, if you run a business, you're going to have employees and machines at work that can do things better than your own children, but they aren't worth more to you than your children because you didn't have children to get things done. God sees us as his children, not as producers, not as means of production. And many of the tasks that we do are, as I said in the last episode, actually gifts if you think about it. The ability to use our bodies and our minds to create and experience and shape and enjoy his creation, and to do all of that with wonder and gratitude, that kind of work, that kind of life is a gift. So I'm doing this series here, What is Man That You Are Mindful of Him? Imago Dei in the Age of AI. And in the first episode, we saw that there were super intelligences that were here on this planet before us, and they envied the crown and the dignity and the value that God gave us. Today, I want to go a little bit deeper into the curious paradox of that lesser crown, that we are made a little lower than the angels and yet crowned with glory and honor. Back in the late 1800s, during the Industrial Revolution, Pope Leo XIII saw this danger coming. So he wrote this groundbreaking, seminal, pivotal, important encyclical called Rerum Novarum, Latin for on new things, because he was seeing the Industrial Revolution reshape the world and reshape human life. And at the same time that the Industrial Revolution was going on, you had these emerging schools of thought. So you had Marxism. Karl Marx had just written his books. You had Darwinism, Darwin had just gone to the Galapagos and seen the turtles and the finches and all that. And so you had this concept of evolutionism. And at the same time, industrial capitalism was bringing people from all around the countryside to the cities to work in these giant factories and basically turning factory workers into machines. You know, they working at the machines, they're working in the textile mills and the steel mills. They became interchangeable cogs in this giant capitalist machine. And Pope Leo in Rerum Novarum looked at all of that and saw that at the extremes, with Marxism, socialism on the one hand, and industrial capitalism on the other hand, that they both made the same category error about the nature of the human person. They both treated workers as mere instruments of production. For the Marxists, getting people out of the hands of the capitalists, but moving them onto collectivist farms and working in communist factories. But for the communists, who were also atheists and evolutionists, they were all about seizing the means of production and seeing people for only their economic value. I mean, if you get into Marx's Das Kapital and the Marxist critique, he sort of evaluates society based on people's economic utility, and he only sees the world through economic utility. On the other hand, you had your industrial capitalists who said, look, we need people to work the textile machines and build the railroads and work in the steel mills, and so I just need replaceable workers. I just need people to man those machines. And so Pope Leo looks at it and says, both of you are doing something, and these are his words, that's truly shameful and inhuman. Because you both ignore, on the far left, the Marxists, on the far right, or not really right, but on the far side of the Industrial Revolution, you have the industrial capitalists. And he said, in both cases, you're insisting that every man and woman is only valuable in terms of what they can produce for the economy and their market worth in that economy, instead of seeing that every man and woman bears a dignity that comes from being created in the image of God, not from how much they produce or how cheaply they can be replaced. When we sit back now and we look at Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum, and that basic Catholic social teaching, it feels prophetic, especially when we're now moving from the Industrial Revolution to the artificial intelligence revolution. Because in the same way that those textile mills and steel mills and the railroads and all that kind of stuff, in the same way, we're looking at the way that AI and robotics are going to change our lives. But in this case, the AI and the robotics are even smarter and faster than any previous machines, and smarter and faster than us. So Leo XIII was defending the worker as not being a cog in a machine, but as a person made in the divine image, who's called to cooperate with the Creator in the work of the world. This is basic Catholic social teaching on economics and work and the dignity of the human person. And Leo XIII saw that when we reduce people to their output, then we strip away the very thing that makes labor noble. The fact that it flows from a person who is loved by God. And if we go further back than Leo XIII, all the way to Jesus, Jesus put it even more simply and tenderly. In Matthew 10, 29 through 31, Jesus says this, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny in the market? And yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows." See, Jesus says that if the Father notices every little bird, how much more does he cherish you? Not for your resume, but because you are his child. I literally could not do this without you, because this show is 100% listener supported. There are no ads, no sponsors. So, if the episodes are helping you to understand the faith, to answer your questions, or draw you closer to historic Catholic Christianity, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra conversations, video Q&As, deep dives, live streams, behind the scenes, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. Together, we're educating, equipping, and exciting people about the beauty of the Catholic faith. There's a story that came out of America in the Industrial Revolution in the 1870s. The story of an American folk hero called John Henry, the steel-driving man. So this is back when the railroads were connecting the American continent, the East Coast to the West Coast, and there was this giant race to lay the railroad tracks across the country, and so they were pushing faster and faster and faster and faster. And John Henry was a black African-American worker, laborer, and he was a legend for being able to, with his hammer, drive more steel spikes in a day. Because, they'd lay down the railroad tracks and you'd have to drive these, steel spikes in to hold them down. And John Henry, swinging his hammer, could lay more steel spikes in a day than any other man alive. And that made him super valuable to the railroad. But somebody came up with a machine, a steam-powered drill that would go down the tracks and, using this steam hammer, be able to pound the spikes in faster. So this is the way that the legend goes, the legend of John Henry, the steel-driving man. They decided to have this contest. And so he was going to race against this new steam-powered drill to prove that he could still drive steel spikes into the rock faster than any machine. So on the day of the race, everybody lined up to watch this epic contest of man versus machine. And John Henry, this great, powerful black man with his shirt off, and he's got this huge sledgehammer, and he starts swinging it with everything he had. His muscles are straining, the hammer's ringing, bam, 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 bam. And throughout the day, from sunrise to sunset, he's driving those spikes, and the steam machine is trying to keep up with him. And in the end, John Henry won. By the end of the day, he beat the drill. He laid more steel spikes faster than the steam machine did. Whereupon he collapsed and died. That's how the story goes. John Henry drove the last spike, won the contest, and then just died, had a heart attack or something, still with a hammer in his hand. And so it's this heroic American folktale that's obviously tragic because it shows the desperation of tying your worth to beating the machine at its own game. You might win the race for a while, but you're going to pay with your life. The folk legend of John Henry, the steel-driving man, captures this human instinct to fight for our dignity, but it also shows how exhausting and ultimately futile it is to define ourselves by competing with technology. Because someone's always going to invent a machine that can do it faster than you can, or longer than you can, or be smarter than you can, or write the code faster than you can, or whatever it is. And it reminds me of another story from American culture. I'm dating myself here, but some of you out there are old like me and you might remember it. It was a children's book, kids' picture book by a woman named Virginia Lee Burton. It was called Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel. Again, this is a shout out to some of you older folks who are listening. Do you remember the kids' book, Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel? Kind of the same premise as the John Henry thing. There's this guy named Mike Mulligan, and he's got this steam shovel named Mary Ann. That's, his affectionate name for the steam shovel. And Mary Ann is a steam shovel. So it's basically like a big backhoe, but it's powered by a steam boiler. So this is back in the old days when you had those kinds of machines powered by steam. And Mike and Mary Ann had, been digging ditches and cellars in the town, basements in the town, foundations for years. The big backhoe thing, steam shovel, digging. They had this really good partnership. I guess, she's kind of this anthropomorphic steam shovel. It's a kid's book, right? And he talks to Mary Ann, and Mary Ann smiles. She's got the way it's painted, illustrated. She's got a big smile and googly eyes and all this kind of stuff. But, Mike and Mary Ann have this great partnership. And for years, they've been digging holes around the town. But the problem is that some people have invented these newfangled diesel backhoes and electric backhoes, and they're taking all the work. So Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann are losing out on jobs to the new diesel earth movers. They're not getting as much work. And people are saying to Mike Mulligan, hey, you got to ditch Mary Ann, send her to the scrapyard and buy yourself a diesel backhoe. But Mike won't do it because he and Mary Ann have this partnership. So they get one last big contract. The town is building a new town hall, and they get this contract that if they can dig the foundation, the basement for this new town hall in a single day, they'll get the contract, because otherwise they give it to the contractors with the diesel machine. So Mike and Mary Ann, they go, okay, we'll do it. And they get up early in the morning and they just dig and dig and dig as fast. But in order to get it done in a single day, in order to meet the terms of the contract, they go faster than they normally would, and they don't dig a ramp to get Mary Ann out. So she's just digging the hole around herself and going down in the hole. And at the end of the day, there's no way to get her back out. So she's dug the hole and she's basically dug her own coffin. And so now Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann are sitting in the bottom of the basement for the new town hall, and they've accomplished their goal, but to what end? Because now she's done. But there's this little boy in the book, and he has this solution. The little boy's standing up there, and he has an idea. So he says, turn Mary Ann the steam shovel into the building's furnace, because she's got the steam boiler inside of her. So they disconnect the shovel part and everything else, and they leave Mary Ann in the basement. And now she's the furnace for the new town hall to heat it. And Mike gets the job as the janitor, so he can, maintain, Mary Ann and all that. So it's a happy ending. Mary Ann, warms the town every winter, and Mike has meaningful work caring for the place that they built together. And it's an interesting story because unlike the story of John Henry, it has kind of a happy ending. And I think it's a little bit interesting and meaningful because in a sense, their dignity is not lost. It's just repurposed. And I was thinking about this Mike Mulligan story as maybe like a better metaphor than the John Henry for what's possible with AI. Because as AI automates some of the repetitive chores that we do, it can also free us up to serve people in new and more relational ways. Mary Ann becomes, the furnace for the town hall to heat the people. Mike becomes the janitor. You let the diesel machines do what they do best, and you let them do what they did best, which was taking care of the people of the town. And I think that as AI frees up a lot of the repetitive tasks in our jobs, what it does do is give us the time and the capacity to serve people in these new, more relational ways, to pour ourselves into the things that machines can never do, like listening to people with real empathy, like loving people with real sacrifice, like creating community and offering real human presence. The machines can never do that. The machines can dig the holes faster, but only we can warm the people and care for the town. You see where I'm going with this? The point is that when technology changes the nature of our work or the terms of our work, human dignity can find new ways to express itself when we become free of some of those repetitive chores. If you don't have to spend all day washing your clothes by hand because there's a washing machine, in theory, you have more time to spend with your family and to read to your children. It's about finding ways to keep our eye on the ball. And the ball here is human dignity and relationship. And I think that's what we need to hear. Because even the most advanced AI in the world can't fix the things that actually break human life. I keep hearing this over and over and over again, how AI is going to solve all of our problems, but it can't solve any of the problems that we really have. It can make certain tasks go faster, like driving the spikes or digging the holes. But the things that really trouble us, the real pains in our life that actually break our lives, aren't about efficiency. You can use ChatGPT to write a love letter. it'll write a great love letter, write a love letter to my wife, and write it in sensitive terms, write her a little poem in it. And it'll do that. Probably wordsmith a better love letter than you can do, but it can't heal a marriage that's been wounded by years of neglect or betrayal. It can't fix relationships. It can diagnose an illness with accuracy because it's pattern recognition. It can read your MRIs and scans and blood work, but it can't sit with you in the hospital room and hold your hand when you get bad news. It can generate endless content about goodness and virtue and art, but it can't give you the grace and the transforming power to overcome your addictions or your greed or your lusts or your pride. AI can optimize your schedule for maximum productivity throughout the day, but it can't teach you how to forgive the person who hurt you the most. It can simulate conversation, but it can't replace the real comfort of a friend who sits with you and loves you and understands you. It can analyze data on loneliness, but it can't create bonds and belonging that comes from sharing meals and laughing and sharing tears with another person. All of those human elements are where real relationship, real sacrifice, and real grace make a difference. And it's all of those places that break us. AI isn't going to fix our marriages. It isn't going to fix our kids. It isn't going to fix our families. It isn't going to fix our addictions. It isn't going to fix our loneliness. It isn't going to fix our sense of despair. It isn't going to fix our hurts. No machine, no matter how sophisticated, can replace the human heart, the human touch, the human capacity for self-giving that actually is a mirror that replicates, that reflects the love of the Trinity itself between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And see, that's exactly why the church has always insisted that the sacraments are for embodied persons, for immortal but embodied souls. The sacraments aren't for code and machines and large language models and AIs. Baptism, we are reborn as adopted sons and daughters of the Father through water and the Spirit. We are washed clean and made new. In confirmation, the Holy Spirit seals us with gifts that no algorithm can replicate or imitate, strengthening us for the battle of faith. In the Eucharist, we receive the very body and blood of Christ, real presence, real union, something that a machine could never receive or give, nourishing us for eternal life that we were made for. In confession, sins are forgiven through the ministry of a priest acting in persona Christi, restoring the soul in the sacrament of mercy. In the anointing of the sick, the suffering body is strengthened for the journey home. In holy orders and matrimony, vocations are consecrated for the building up of the church and the world. These aren't metaphors or coping mechanisms. They're efficacious signs instituted by Christ that touch the soul through the body, because God made us body and soul, crowned with glory even while lower than the angels. And this is the Catholic answer to the question of human dignity in the age of AI. The sacraments remind us that grace builds on nature, that our embodied life is the very place where God meets us and elevates us. They are the concrete, tangible ways that the eternal Son who became man continues to pour his life into our flesh and blood existence. So the curious paradox of the lesser crown is this: we are limited, we are finite, we are breakable, and yet, we are the very ones that God chose to elevate. Those pure intelligences, the angels, they were never offered what we were offered, to become partakers of the divine nature through grace. The eternal Son didn't become an angel, he became a man. He took on our flesh, our limitations, our suffering, our death, and in doing so, he raised our lowly human dignity higher than the stars. And that is the scandal of the incarnation that still provokes envy in the ancient superintelligences that rebelled. And it's the reason that the devil still seethes with envy, and the reason that we can face the future with calm confidence. And so, when the culture tells you that only the ultra productive, the perfectly optimized, the ones who never slow down, right? The machines, the super intelligences, the AGIs that can outthink us and outperform us, that only they deserve to exist. Remember that God keeps his eye on all the sparrows. Remember John Henry's tragic heroism and Mike Mulligan's quiet repurposing to serve others. Remember Pope Leo XIII standing up for workers when machines were first threatening their livelihood. And above all, remember the incarnation. Your worth was stamped on you at the moment of creation when God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And your worth was vindicated forever when the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And your eternal destiny was sealed with the resurrection of Christ, which is the first fruits of the resurrection for all of us. Not even the smartest AGI superintelligence can ever take that away. Yes, the machines are coming for many tasks, and they may surpass us on almost every measurable metric, like they did to John Henry the steel-driving man or Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann the steam shovel. But those AGIs, those machines, will never bear the image of God. They will never receive sanctifying grace. They will never be raised with glorified bodies on the last day. They will never enter into the beatific vision or the communion of saints in the New Jerusalem, on the new heaven and earth that is personal and embodied and loving and eternal. And that, my friends, is the curious paradox of the lesser crown, lower than the angels and yet crowned with glory and honor. And no artificial intelligence on earth can ever change that. You are of more value than many sparrows. You are worth the blood of the Son of God. Live like it, love like it. And don't let the silicon gods, the chips, and the data centers convince you otherwise. The Imago Dei is not a productivity score. It's the very reason the eternal God took on our humanity. It's the reason we can receive grace and offer sacrifice and one day rise with glorified bodies to share in the life of the Trinity forever. In an age when everything seems to be accelerating toward efficiency and replacement, this truth matters. Our dignity is received, it's not achieved. Our value is given, it's not earned. And that changes everything about how we face the future with hope rather than fear. It frees us to use the tools of technology as servants, not as masters, and to order our lives towards the love of God and neighbor. It invites us to create, to steward, to love with the freedom that only sons and daughters of the King can know. And it reminds us that no revolution, no matter how dazzling, can undo what God has done in crowning us with glory and honor. We'll be back with another episode very soon. And this show is 100% listener supported. My patrons keep the lights on, and they let me spend more time researching and recording so that these episodes keep coming. If this show has helped you, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra video Q&As, deep dive courses, live streams, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. And would you please rate the podcast on whatever platform you're using and write a review on Apple Podcasts or on consideringcatholicism.com. And you can drop me a line. Patrons can comment directly on Patreon posts or Spotify. I read every one. Or you can always use the contact form at consideringcatholicism.com, or you can email me at consideringcatholicism@gmail.com. I love hearing your questions, your comments, and your stories.